Hi everyone, and welcome to another episode of Tip of the Week. I am temporarily in my hometown of Montreal this week, and just as a brief precursor here, I will be attending SIGGRAPH. So for any of you who are going to be at SIGGRAPH this year, then feel free to stop by the Toon Boom booth. And kind of just as a warm-up and precursor to that, I'm also doing a meeting of live-action storyboard artists in the LA region. So if that's something that interests you, I'm particularly focusing on meeting live-action storyboard artists to find out how I can add things to the software to improve the software for you. So if that's something that, if you are a live-action storyboard artist and you'd like to participate in that, then feel free to email me at lily@toonboom.com, Lilly @toonboom.com, and we can invite you to join us for that discussion. Okay, so today I wanted to take a step back and talk about Storyboard Pro a little bit. The things that I'm going to talk about here are things that will apply also when you're working in Harmony. But we've done a lot of really heavy things like rigging and deformations and all kinds of heavy stuff like that. So I thought it would be good just to take a step back and try to do a very simple exercise this week. And so this week it's putting text in perspective. And so there are two ways of doing this really, and I'll show you the first way, which is when you're working on a flat image, and then I'll show you the second way, which is when you're actually going to work in 3D space. So let's just do this. I like to call this text on a billboard, but we'll just go here into the stage view so that we can draw something. So whenever I like to draw something like it's text on a billboard, I'll just draw the billboard first flat. So here's my rectangle, and then I'll put a couple of lines coming down out of it. And of course you can turn on your snapping so you can snap that line in there, hold down shift to make it a straight line, and get those lined up pretty well there. Now I can put my text in here, so I'll just say text on a billboard. Isn't this great? Okay, so now once you have the text in there, what you can do is you can select your text, you can resize it and make sure it's the right size that you want to have in there, the right font and all that stuff. You need to finish for this exercise. You need to finish figuring out the font before moving on to the next step, because what we're going to do is basically we're going to rasterize this text similar to how you would do it in Photoshop or in Flash. So once we rasterize the text, you will no longer have the ability to change those things that are text driven. So let me try and find a font here that works for me. So let's say that I like this one here, and maybe I want it to be bold. Then once I'm satisfied with the way that the text looks, then I can move on to the next step, which is actually putting it on in perspective. So let me just choose something that's a little bit easier to see. So a good sans serif font here that I can look at, stick it in the middle of my billboard. So alright, so let's say I'm ready to go. If I just try right away to use my perspective tool on this, the perspective tool is a tool that's nested underneath your contour editor tool. And what the perspective tool allows you to do is you can make a selection of a drawing and you can edit it with these handles basically to modify it. But you notice when I do that, it's not grabbing the text with it. And you can't select a text object with the perspective tool. It's one of those things where you have to convert the text into a drawing object in order for that tool to work on it. The same thing, for example, with my eraser tool. If I try to use my eraser tool on this text, I can't erase the text. But if I take the text and I rasterize it first, then I'll be able to use all of my drawing tools on this text. So in order to rasterize it, it works the same way that it does in Flash actually, where you can right click on this text and then you can go to Convert, Break Apart Text Layers. And the first time that you do it, it breaks it up into individual text objects, so each one of these is a separate text object. So if I want to make something wonky happening on this, or maybe I want to have a different font on one of those, then I can do that easily and just kind of make it look a little different there. Now if I select the text again, because it's still not yet a drawing object, if I select it again, right click on it, convert, and break apart text layers a second time, now this turns into a drawing object. And you can tell because when you look at the strokes on this, you see that there is, might be difficult to see on that, but there is this slight orange line around the outside of each one of the letters. And then the other thing is that now that this is a drawing object, you can use all of your drawing tools, even your eraser tool. So let's say this is a text, this is a billboard that's been there for a long time, it's really beat up. You might just want to sort of make this look a little bit more like it's been there for a while or whatever. So once you have that done and you have the text looking how you want, you could even on this text, you could even go in here and draw some stuff on it. Like if you wanted to have some text that, that has snow gathering on top of it, if it's a snow-themed billboard, then you can draw the snow on top and so on. And everything that I've done so far, you can also do in Animate, Anime Pro, and Harmony. So let's say this is great now. If I go back to the same perspective tool here that I used before, now if I drag around here and make the selection, since that text is now a drawing object, I now have the ability to actually put this in perspective. So this is the first way of putting text in perspective. So in fact, if I look at this scene in terms of a 3D aspect, there isn't anything 3D that I've done with it. I have simply, it's still a flat image, but I've simply taken that flat image and I've kind of faked the perspective here by squishing down one side of the drawing. You can also kind of skew using this perspective tool a little bit. So if you have, your vanishing point somewhere over here, you could kind of just like squeeze it down and then you can skew it up and down and just get it looking the way that you want it to look. So that's the first way. Now you can do all of that in Animate, Anime Pro, and Harmony. Now I'm going to show you another way. This way, so far, you can also do in Storyboard and Storyboard Pro. The next way that I'm going to show you, I'll just do another panel for this, and I'll draw another billboard for us here. The next way I'm going to show you is actually doing this in a real 3D space. And so this real 3D space stuff is something that can only be done in Storyboard Pro 3D and Harmony. But I want to show it to you just so that you know that the possibilities for this exist as well. So in this case, I can put text on a billboard. This is really cool. Okay, so now I'll select my text and with my select tool, and I'll make it larger. Maybe I'll hold down Shift to constrain the proportions on that. So for this one, instead of actually using my perspective tool on it, what I'll do instead is I'll promote my scene to 3D. And so when my scene is a 3D scene, I can take my transform tool and I can actually select that layer there that has the text in it and the billboard in it, and I can actually physically move it around in a 3D space. And in Storyboard Pro 3D, if you hold down Command and Shift, you can rotate around your stage view to check out what that's actually doing, and you can set some elements up here in space, right? So maybe I also want to have another layer. I just hit the Look At selected layer to snap to that position where the background is. So let's say I also have a road here, and I should probably do this slightly nicer than I'm going to do it right now, but I'll just do it really, really badly. Forgive me. So let's say this is like a freeway, very, very, very bad looking freeway. Okay, but so then I could take this one and I could take this layer and actually just plop that down as well, putting it next to my billboard. And if I want to just align these two together, the billboard probably is at an angle in relation to the road. When you look at billboards in space, they might be at a complete right angle to the road. They might be at a slight, I think they're usually at a slight angle inwards, not like a full 90-degree angle. So then you can align these up so that the bottom of that billboard kind of corresponds to the level of the road. And now what's cool about this, and what I think is a little bit nicer about doing it the 3D way than doing the regular 2D way, is if you put a camera move on this, like if I select my camera tool, first frame, last frame, and I do something like I'll zoom my camera in or I'll zoom it out. Let's take the last frame there, snap to the selected keyframe, and I can zoom it in. And then I could even, like, if the purpose of this shot is to focus in on this billboard, I could even focus in on there and actually rotate this guy around. So let me just go back to my stage view here for a second, and I'll just figure out what I want to do with this camera. So maybe I want to just slightly angle it towards that billboard there. So, you know, it looks like I might have got a slight curve going on there. But now if I take a look at this over the course of my panel, having that 3D space allows you to get more out of that shot. And it really depends on what you're trying to do in that shot, but you might even want to start down here at a low angle. Like maybe you're at the car level to begin with in the shot, and you're quite zoomed out. You know, I'm just giving some examples here. And then as you go through that shot, you're going to lift up and focus in on this guy. And if we really want to see what it looks like, I like to turn on the camera mask, and then I can really have a feeling of that shot as I'm pulling through here. So maybe on that last frame, I'll select the frame, snap to the selected keyframe. I might want to be sort of looking down from a bird's eye view on this frame, so I can look down a little bit more on this one, just to really show what that camera angle now is doing. Whereas if I did a similar thing in the 2D scene, let's go back to this 2D example, and I'll actually just draw the road in perspective in 2D, just to kind of show you what the difference looks like. So now, you know, I can't actually rotate around my scene with Command and Shift because it's not a 3D scene. If I select my camera, I create first and last keyframes. Instead of being able to rotate in perspective, I can zoom in on this. For sure, I can zoom in on this one. I can get right in there. And for the first frame, I can zoom out. The thing that you can't get is you can't get that sense of the low angle. So instead of having the low angle and then the upper angle, you're just kind of zooming in on this, which is fine. But maybe you can see the difference for the second one. And let me just switch away from my camera tool to make this a little bit more obvious, and I'll zoom in on here so we can really see. So here's the first example where it's a flat frame that you're zooming in on, and then here's the second example coming up here where you're starting from a low angle and then you're coming up and into this billboard. So I think you guys can see the difference. I don't think there's a better way, like there's no right way and wrong way. It really depends on what you're going to do for your final product. So if your final product is an animation and that animation is going to be done flat, then plan it flat. If your final product is a 3D animation and it's going to be done with a 3D scene, plan it in 3D. If it's going to be a live action one, plan it in 3D, in my humble opinion, so you get a bit more of a sense of what's really happening with that shot. Same thing goes for Harmony. For Animate and Animate Pro, you do not have the ability to rotate layers in all axes in this way. But with Harmony, you can rotate. Actually, sorry, you do in Animate Pro as well. So in Animate Pro and Harmony, you can rotate layers in all directions by enabling 3D on that layer, and then you can position those layers in space. So if you plan your billboard and draw your billboard flat, you could enable 3D or attach it to a peg layer and enable 3D on that peg layer, and you could actually move that in space just the same way that I did here. So hopefully that just gave you guys a few ideas of some fun things to try out now if you have to do something like text on a billboard or text in perspective or working on scenes that are done in perspective. And I will see you guys next week.